Now seems very clear that Prince Harry, a miserable, a shifty, and awkward Prince Harry, used this Middle Eastern fake royal tour with his wife Meghan Markle to scarf her. He was engaging in scarfing. Now, this basically means publicly rejecting, sending a message. And this was first picked up by Nancy and Stephanie Sidley, who, as ever, the Sidley twins of Twin Talks have the receipts. And you see there, Nancy says, Harry keeps scarfing Meghan on this trip and I'm here for it. Stephanie then pulled these two pictures and said, Steph might be onto something. Harry basically scarfed Meghan the entire time. And here's one of the videos where I think you can really see it, sort of on the last day. Do you see that? So just looking closer, Meghan offers her hand to Harry and he's just not interested. And it wasn't the first time that this had happened on the visit. It was one of many. And Stephanie has a deeper theory on this. She says Meghan Markle is not going to leave the royals alone without a fight. This has blackmail written all over it. They knew about Andrew's arrest, and the king knows Meghan has collateral on everyone. She has them backed into a corner, but not for long. Meghan fails at everything. And there's another example of the scuffing, the so-called scuffing. This was a new term for me, but I like it. The rejection here. Watch. Okay, so let's look at this closely. Meghan gets out of the car. She puts the hand up. No, he doesn't want to take the hand, does he? Does not want the PDA. Look at that up close. The hand, and she then clasps her hands and puts her hands in her pocket because she's so annoyed about the rejection. Yeah, I think there's a lot of evidence of this, actually, especially when you think about Harry's general demeanor. I mean, as the royal rogue pointed out, who is just the best at body language stuff, what living your best life looks like. And Hans, who has done some great stuff as well, posted, watching the body language between Harry and Meghan is full of tension. There's no warmth, no shared smiles, no natural affection. They look like they're simply tolerating each other. He seems happy chatting with others, yet they barely at each other. So, I mean, P. Diner, to me, the video evidence is really clear. Like, he doesn't want to touch her in public, and she kept trying. And there were a couple of moments where, like, she did manage to grab hold of his arm during a photo. But to me, this was quite telling.
Yes, I think it shows a lack of purpose for both of them. They clearly are not aligned in the work that they're doing. Something has happened behind the scenes that is showing a clear divide. And I think this is just the beginning of what Harry is going to start to do. He's going to start to be a little bit more aggressive about not wanting to adhere to what Meghan is requesting. I think he is starting to not want to give in to all of her demands. And I think this is a sign of Harry showing, I am not going to yield to you when I don't want to. He is upset with her. And I think even part of this trip might be because of Meghan, and he's probably not wanting to be there at all. But he knows that she would not have been able to do this without him. And I think it's a sign that he's going to start showing himself to be a little bit more standoffish towards Meghan and her demands. This is the beginning of what we're seeing, and it will get worse.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also think, P. Diner, this tour is a disaster too for King Charles, though, and I want to come to that in just one moment. First, though, Annabelle Fenwick Elliott, she's one of my favourite commentators when it comes to Harry and Meghan, I think summed up the fake humanitarian purpose of the trip perfectly. Watch.
Is back, guys. This time she's cosplaying as a working royal again. I wrote this article today about it for the Mail. Harry looks pretty miserable, doesn't he? They're in Jordan being humanitarians, and you just know it was too good of an opportunity for Markle Sparkle to not exploit. She is no longer the most despised member of the royal family. This is how I imagine her call to the publicist going. She's had 11 publicists step down, by the way, since 2020, so God knows who's in charge now. Oh my God, it's finally happened. Did you see the photos of Andrew? He looks like a startled weasel in the back of the car. Yeah, I know. Now is my perfect time. Get me on the first jet to somewhere profound. so I can kick a football around with some kids, make sure they're refugees. It doesn't matter where, but bonus points if it'll annoy Will and Kate. That last bit was a bit unfair. She went to Jordan, a bit random. Apparently, Will and Kate have lots of ties to Jordan and they really love it there, which makes it even more a snub, but I think that's reading too far into it. Anyway, she's swanning around Jordan in a very crumpled, expensive trouser suit, doing her best Princess Diana impression. And I go into it in more detail in this mail piece that I wrote. But basically, I think I would honestly rather another season of the Netflix show than loads of fake royal tours that I feel like we have coming up. We're next going to get Humanitarian Meghan, and I don't think that Humanitarian Meghan is real. I think Netflix Meghan feels and fake, but it's more real than Humanitarian Meghan.
Totally. But we are going to see more of this because obviously Netflix Meghan hasn't worked out, and that's where there is this real danger for King Charles. Indeed, Tom Sykes in the Royalist Substack, who was the first to break the news of this visit, went further actually, describing this as a humiliation for King Charles and Buckingham Palace. But he's got the receipts as to why. I want to take you through this and then we'll get reaction from P. Diner. He writes, with Prince Harry and Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, launching a high-profile and politically sensitive trip to Jordan just days after Prince Andrew's arrest, we now see a royal family in which King Charles clearly no longer exercises any control. Discipline has broken down, and Buckingham Palace appears unable to stop Harry and Meghan's quasi-royal freelancing. They arrived in Amman for meetings with the Director General of the WHO and other international officials, stepping out of their car in sharp coordinated outfits and moving straight into a full schedule of visits. On paper, the programme is charitable and private. In practice, it looks like an unofficial royal tour. At the exact moment the monarch is trying to steady the institution after Andrew's arrest. All this is playing out while the king deals with the most serious crisis in modern times, Andrew. Officers have only just completed a days-long search of Royal Lodge, his former official home, after earlier raiding his temporary address at Wood Farm. God knows what they will find. Thames Valley Police had already confirmed that they were examining claims Andrew shared sensitive information with Epstein while serving as the United Kingdom's trade envoy, and that they were separately looking into an allegation a woman was trafficked to Britain by Epstein for a sexual encounter with the Duke. Andrew has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing, but the combination of a disgraced Duke under arrest and a younger son staging rogue global tours confirms my view that the king is unable or unwilling to enforce strict standards. His health problems and cautious temperament means few insiders expect a sweeping reset while he remains on the throne. There is little faith that he will move decisively to remove titles, shut down confusing semi-royal branding, or force wayward relatives into private life. Harry and Meghan now run their own schedule, media operation and charities while still trading on royal identity to make money. It's just not sustainable to carry on with the royal family in which people with royal titles act independently of any clear institutional plan, leaving Buckingham Palace to watch rather than direct. Then, interestingly, Tom goes into some information about what type of royal family William is considering, Prince William wants. He says under William's model, titles and perks would flow strictly from work, not birth alone. Anyone carrying out full-time duties on behalf of the Crown, regional visits, overseas diplomacy, bread and butter engagements on a wet Wednesday in places far from London would be a Royal Highness and would hold a Prince or Princess title. So you're basically, in that scenario, at the moment, looking at Anne, Edward, Sophie, Catherine. In return, they would receive a defined income and a single clearly allocated home tied to that role. Those who choose not to serve as working royals would be treated differently. They would not use the HRH style, they would not receive state funding or subsidised housing, and they would not enjoy special privileges from the institution. Instead, they would live as private citizens, free to make money and live as they wish in the manner of Peter and Zara Phillips. The aim is to remove the blurred lines that currently allow relatives to enjoy royal branding while operating outside any structure, the very problem exposed by the spare and by Andrew's downfall. So, P. Diner, very interesting information about what William is considering. I think he's completely right to do so. But do you agree with Tom Sykes that this Harry and Meghan visit unfortunately poses a serious issue for the king and makes it clear now that he has just lost any semblance of order?
I think it shows the king as weak. I think it shows him as someone who is not able to control his own son. He is not able to align the messaging of the royals because he has this son who is just doing willy-nilly what he wants to do with his wife, and they don't have the best interest of the royals. They're clearly only doing what they can for themselves. So I think it shows the king not in a good light. It doesn't show him as someone who is able to really hold his son accountable for everything that he is doing. He's just doing what he wants. So, I think if the king wants to be respected, if he wants to make sure that he handles this crisis with his brother and other things that are going to still come out, because we know it's not over, he needs to get Harry and Meghan in line, and he needs to do something that keeps them from just showing up, popping up, on some fake royal tour. That cannot be good for the real royals. What are they thinking? This is almost, I believe, an emergency. I think it clearly shows you need to remove them from the website. There should be no direct links to Harry and Meghan via the real royals. That's where you need to begin. And then these other things around titles later and, who gets a title, who doesn't, I think that is a good thing. But there is something that needs to happen right now, because I know they're probably planning more trips as we speak.
Totally. And it's also getting out of control, P. Dinah, in terms of the public reaction. I mean, I know they're cretinous, but look at what the Republic Organisation has been doing outside of Buckingham Palace this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, P. Dinah, you keep talking just while we look at this.
Okay, yes. So right here, when we saw these billboards put up on the gates, that is just a beginning of backlash for the king. He will always be asked this question about what he knew, and he's going to have to keep addressing these issues, I think, for the rest of his reign. It would be in his best interest to just, I'm sorry, I feel this way. For a lot of people, they think this is not a good thing, but I think he should abdicate. I think there's too much going on that will compromise the current monarchy, and they have to have a clean slate. And we know that William and Catherine will be wonderful in this role. They need to just get rid of this horrible messaging, anything connected to Andrew, and start with William and Catherine to just get rid of this story, because as long as King Charles is on the throne, this will never go away. This messaging will elevate and get worse and worse. He's clearly not looking out for the monarchy as a whole. I think it's pretty selfish to want to stay on the throne despite all these horrible PR messagings with these photos and what he knew. And now there's stories coming out that the king knew about Andrew and passing on these secret documents to Epstein. He's not going to get away from it. And it's just staying on the real royals and William's future reign. I just think he needs to just abdicate.
Well, see, for me, I think we need to hear from Charles more. Like, the silence isn't working, because actually, P. Dinah, there was a piece of good news for the king this week, because it actually turned out that it looks like he had been the one advocating for Andrew to lose that formal role. But because the king is just staying silent on all of this and just hoping, I think very naively, that it all goes away, no one was really talking about this. But I want to show you how Sly News revealed what went down. Watch.
Dan Wootton is an experienced commentator, and in this segment he advances a clear storyline that Prince Harry's body language on a Middle East visit signals a deliberate public rejection of Meghan Markle, that the timing of the trip compounds a wider crisis around King Charles and Prince Andrew, and that Harry's legal strategy against the Daily Mail is drifting into morally and potentially legally murky territory. Those are strong claims. They deserve closer examination, not because they are sensational, but because of what they imply about power, control, and credibility inside the monarchy and around it. First, the scarfing idea. What Dan is really doing here is taking a set of brief public moments, a missed handhold, an awkward step, a pause beside a car door, and treating them as a coded message. That method is increasingly common online. Microgestures get packaged into a narrative of marriage breakdown, manipulation, or retaliation. The problem is not that body language is meaningless. It isn't. The problem is the certainty. A missed hand can be a deliberate snub or a timing error, a staging issue, a security cue, an instruction from staff, or simply fatigue. When commentary turns those ambiguous moments into proof of a strategy, it risks creating a self-fulfilling loop. Audiences see contempt everywhere, and every clip becomes confirmation. And that matters because Dan doesn't just describe tension, he suggests intent, leverage, even blackmail dynamics, citing online commentators who speculate about collateral and inside knowledge. That is a serious escalation, and it's exactly where an investigative approach has to slow down. If you're alleging leverage, you need something more than vibes and theories. Otherwise, the analysis becomes a screenplay built from fragments. Second, the bigger institutional implication. Dan argues that the trip shows King Charles has lost control. It's an arresting phrase, but it also needs definition. What does control mean in a modern monarchy? If it means the palace can stop royals from traveling privately, the answer is, not easily, not directly, and not without consequences. If it means the palace can clarify status, titles, and representation, then yes, there are levers, at least in communication and protocol. But those levers tend to be cautious by design, because every move sets a precedent and risks escalating the conflict. In other words, not acting can look weak, but acting can widen the fire. That's why the most interesting part of Dan's segment isn't the hand-holding. It's the branding problem.
Begin tonight with that breaking news. Sky News can now bring you, for the first time, emails that have been found in the Epstein files, which appear to show the dead paedophile financier blaming King Charles, for Andrew's removal as trade envoy. Well, the brief exchange is dated from the 21st of July 2011, the day after it was announced the then prince would step down from his trade role. Epstein writing, "I assume he knows that this is Charles's doing." That was in response to a message from an associate who said, "Lots of TV coverage on PA and always big feature on you. Insane." Sky News believes PA refers to Prince Andrew.
So, P. Dinah, that actually looks like Charles may have been working behind the scenes as early as 2011. I mean, you could still argue it was far too late, but to try and get Andrew out of that formal role. But of course, he's not talking about this at all.
Yeah, and I think they'll continue to not talk about it, and that's the problem. We live in the information age right now. People need information. It's not like it used to be where access to information was slow and you could easily just not talk about it and it would go away. People need to hear from the king because of the fast news cycle and how much information is coming out every day. People have access to all these documents and they have questions. And when you don't say anything, you don't address the issue, it shows that you are not stepping into your leadership and taking a stand and making your thoughts known on an issue. And to me, that is weak leadership. I think it looks so bad that you don't say anything, you don't address it. And this will hurt the monarchy. Clearly, it will definitely hurt them and things that are still yet to come out. Because trust me, the king knows what is still yet to come out. And not saying anything when we know you know what has happened just shows that you are, like I said, weak. And people don't like that and they want to hear from him. Absolutely.
It's also all kicked off this week, P. Dinah, and I think it's been overshadowed, so it's worth us just spending a little bit of time on this in Prince Harry's ongoing legal action versus the Daily Mail. And I know there was the big flurry when Harry gave his evidence. I don't think he did well in the stand at all. But what's emerging in court now, I think, is so disturbing that we have someone who still has a title of Duke linked to all of this. But let me just take you through the two main developments this week. So look at this. A claim in court, and of course this is an ongoing civil court action, but a claim in court nonetheless, that a phone hacker who was working for Prince Harry and his legal team tried to blackmail a boss at the Daily Mail. Now, I've said for some time, Harry, you're getting into the mud with these criminals. What happens when you get in the mud with criminals? You get dirty too, mate. So the former associate editor of the Mail on Sunday, a guy called Chris Anderson, gave evidence that he had received a disturbing call from this man, Graham Johnson, in 2016 about a cache of emails that would be very embarrassing for him. Now, Johnson is a member of Harry's legal research team, and he is said to have claimed that if Anderson cooperated with his enquiries, the emails would be kept private. He said, and by the way, the emails are said to contain material obtained from phone hacking. So he told the court, I was left with the clear impression that Mr. Johnson had been trying to blackmail me. In a memo that he sent to the head of legal at Associated Newspapers, he claimed that he felt he was being blackmailed during this call. Johnson is said to have warned Anderson that his alleged unlawful activity could form the basis of a legal case against the Mail, which of course is what has now happened. He said he was authorised to tell me that if I cooperated with his enquiries into the Mail group, then the emails would be kept private. He wanted to expose phone hacking within the Mail. I suggested he was threatening me. When Johnson gave evidence in the case last month, Anthony White, KC for the Mail, put it to him this was a threat tantamount to blackmail. Wasn't it, Mr. Johnson? Johnson replied, no, it's not blackmail. Blackmail is a serious criminal offence. He suggested that Mr. Anderson's written account of the call was a monkeyed up memo designed to serve his own agenda. But let's just think about this for one moment, okay? Harry, a member of the royal family, relying on a criminal, a phone hacker to be a key part of his legal research team with claims of blackmail. And actually, it even gets worse, P. Dinah, because now... And sorry, you've got to keep up with this because I know you're into the weeds here, but it's so fascinating and dirty and dodgy. This dude, who's called Gavin Burrows, he is a private investigator, a key witness. He now has to give evidence from a secret location because he claims that he fears for his safety, again, because of allies of Harry, including the cretinous individuals who tried to destroy my life at the Byline Times. Now, the judge, Justice Nicklin, told the court that Burrows had been an important figure in the case against Associated Newspapers, that's the owner of the Daily Mail. During the trial, the claimants have relied upon Mr. Burrows' evidence to put very serious allegations of wrongdoing to several of the Mail's witnesses, the judge said. Mr. Burrows' evidence is a major component of the claimant's case. Without it, a substantial number of allegations of unlawful information gathering made against the defendant and its journalists could not be sustained. Burrows moved abroad last year and claims he fears for his safety if he discloses his location as a result of threats and harassment. And as I say, those threats and harassment, or at least the claims of threats and harassment, come from those sources connected to Prince Harry, including those very, very dodgy characters at Byline Times. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be thinking, what is this all about? What are these names? But what matters here is the fact that Harry is working with criminals, and Harry's lawyer, a very shady character, in my opinion, a sleazy guy at the very least, legally. He wants to be famous and he loves the attention. He tried to stop this guy from giving evidence because he wanted to do so from a remote location, which also seems very bizarre to me, given we have seen other people like David Furnish for the plaintiffs give evidence from a location abroad. But the point is, Pete Dinah, this is a dirty, dodgy, awful case. I don't think someone who is still carrying a Duke title, still referring to himself as a prince, should have anything to do with this. And again, we come to the earlier point, which is that this shows Charles has lost control because he knew this was coming. He couldn't get Harry to change his mind and pull out of the case. But he also didn't have the balls, P. Dinah, to say, okay, you go through with this, you're losing your titles.
Yeah. I think this shows how desperate he is, and you have to work with people who are criminals when you don't have a case, when you have a very weak argument and you have a situation where you're desperate. And that's exactly what it is. And another point to the king, look at Harry and how desperate he is and what's going on with this case. How is the king once again going to be, able to reign when you have a son who is doing things against your wishes that could come back on you. And you just never know what things could be uncovered, what will happen from these lawsuits. Harry is just in a position now where he has lost his way. He has put himself in a position where he is going to always find himself in problems because he is with a rogue wife who doesn't want to conform to working with Harry's family, being someone that can take orders. Meghan wants to do what she wants to do. And I think this is all part of what Harry has to deal with now. And this is why he's working with people who are criminals, because you just got yourself in a position now where you just don't have any direction. Nothing makes sense. You're completely off the charts in everything that you do. You're losing money, and you're going to end up having to pay from this case because there's just no way they're going to be able to win this. I find it shocking that nothing has happened to Harry, considering all of the things that he has his hands in. He really is giving the royal family, I believe, a bad name. And what will they do? What will the king do? Absolutely nothing. It's disgusting. Harry needs to be put in his place desperately right now.
I know, and it just can't go on. Taking no action cannot go on. But very strong words from P. Diner today. You've got to subscribe.
When public-facing activity looks like an unofficial royal tour, audiences inevitably ask, on whose authority? Even if the program is charitable and privately organized, the optics can blur lines, especially when titles and royal associations remain part of the public identity. In a reputational crisis, ambiguity is expensive. Third, Dan references reporting about historic emails that appear to suggest King Charles played a role in removing Prince Andrew from a formal trade position. If accurate, that would complicate the simple Charles does nothing narrative. It would suggest a quieter, behind-the-scenes approach existed long before today's crisis. The real issue, then, becomes communication strategy. Silence may feel dignified inside the institution, but in a fast news cycle it can read as avoidance, leaving a vacuum for campaigners, commentators, and rivals to fill. Fourth, there's the legal case surrounding Harry and the Daily Mail. Dan highlights testimony and counter-testimony that includes an allegation of attempted blackmail, and a witness giving evidence from an undisclosed location due to claimed threats and harassment. These are allegations within ongoing proceedings, and they must be treated as such, but the reputational point stands. When a royal figure's case relies on controversial operators, disputed methods, or witnesses surrounded by intimidation claims, the story stops being principal versus press and starts looking like trench warfare. That shift is strategically dangerous for Harry, because it weakens the moral clarity of his argument. And it is institutionally dangerous for the monarchy because it reinforces the perception that titles and status can coexist with operations that look, to the public, like the rougher edges of celebrity litigation culture. So what's the responsible takeaway? Not Harry is definitely sending coded messages, and not Charles must abdicate. The more grounded conclusion is this: the monarchy cannot afford blurred lines. Either public-facing royals operate within a clearly defined structure, duties, standards, accountability, and messaging, or they operate as private citizens without institutional signals that imply representation. If William's reported model is work-based status, that is at least logically coherent. Privileges flow from service, not birth alone. But coherence requires implementation, and implementation requires choices, and choices require the palace to accept short-term turbulence for long-term clarity. Dan's segment is effective because it turns uncertainty into a story. The real question is whether the institution will do the harder thing, replace story with structure, and replace implication with clear, enforceable boundaries.